Hi, this is János, it's Real World Audio, and let's look at one of my previous videos. I have received a very good question on it. So this was about void pipes and mass-loaded transmission lines, and John asked a very good question. And so let me say, as far as finding a driver that is full range, it's really hard to find one that doesn't have breakup and lots of ringing. Not any information on spectral decays, not even for the exotic drivers. Do you recommend any? Also, do you show these measurements? So I would like to reflect on these single drivers and what is my experience with all of these things. Uh, the breakup and ringing. So I think in my experience, ringing with full range drivers is a significant issue for the cheaper models. So when you have poor quality baskets, like for example with the Fostex FF125WK, those are these drivers which are in these speakers here. These have very poor quality baskets, and that's what causes that I think it was like 8-10 kilohertz ringing that they had. I think 10 kilohertz ringing. 10, yeah, I think it was 10. I forgot already. It felt like a lifetime ago when I built them at the end of last year. So anyway, for that's a really annoying resonance, and when you build these speakers and they break in, or even during break-in, they just sound fantastic. They have a lot of promise, but often the biggest complaint with them is that high frequency shrillness, sharpness that is caused by the metal frame of the basket just resonating at that 10 kilohertz frequency. And the treatment for that is very simple. Just like put masking tape around the basket, so when you have those wings which are holding the basket to the motor, just bind some masking tape around that, or you can also put some cotton thread around it, or use epoxy or glue on it, wooden strips. That would be the very best, to make sure that the metal will not ring, but that other material, either the tape dampens it, or if you glue wood on it, then the wood will distribute the resonances to a broad spectrum of frequencies and will not let the metal to resonate at that single frequency. So I think the ringing can be really, really well controlled. So I have so for me, in my case, when I did measurements, I just used the app on the phone, the scope app on the phone, and after like treating the driver, and it's not just the driver itself, but when you have metallic screws that hold the cabinet together, when I changed the metallic screws, actually they were stainless steel screws, changed them for brass screws, then that 10 kilohertz resonance just completely went away. So like treating the magnet and making sure that you do not have other metallic components, like those hard metals which have similar material as the baskets frame. So don't let them resonate at that frequency. We can take care of that basket ringing issue. And about the breakup, I think, and what I noticed really is that the problem with full range driver is the biggest problem is that when you have the visor cone, or any other means of high frequency generation, then the amount of high frequency is disproportionately higher than the amount of the mid-range and the bass you are getting. And that's not true for all of them, but for those where you see this happening, that is a major issue. and I've seen that this is really something that needs to be taken care of, and and I try to look for that in the frequency measurement curves. If the highs are just really imbalanced, so like the 10 dB or 15 dB higher than the mid-range, then that's a big no-no. But the problem is, or I would say the challenge is that how the drivers measure by themselves, and when you put them in a specific cabinet, they can behave very, very differently. So it's just like the starting point, the measurement, that's a guess, and when we put them in, we can take it from there and refine the cabinet design. No, yeah, I just agree with you. There's just no information on spectral decay, so that's what we get. And so what kind of drivers do I recommend? So actually, if you want to get like a full range driver that I think would measure probably the best, it would be the Cube Audio drivers. And the one that I have experience with is the Cube Audio FC8. So I just bring up here, this is the website of Cube Audio, and they have measurements there. Because you see, John was asking about measurements as well. So here they are, they have provided some measurements, and that's what it is. So you see that this is like a fourth, is it fourth octave smoothing, and you see it like a scratchy squiggle, and that's how it is for every measurement like that. And when we, it's a little bit wonky, let's see. Okay, and when they apply strong smoothing, it looks like that. So it's a kind of standard for any driver. When you see such suspiciously flat lines, that's because of the strong smoothing. And when you see these squiggles, that's when you know that you are getting more info on the driver. And it doesn't mean that when you see this, it's worse than this. It just means that the data is presented in a different fashion for you. And so what we can see here, and why this is good, because it shows like the different, so this is the on-axis response, and I think this is like a 30 degrees off axis and 60 degrees off axis response. And that's really nice, because you see that how was the difference between on-axis and off-axis. And always the off-axis, the high frequencies will be lower than the on-axis response. What looks here really nice is that between the 30 degrees and 60 degrees there's a very little difference. So that already tells me that in the high frequency this is a pretty promising driver. And when you look at the average sensitivity or efficiency, you see that this like 8 kilohertz and up, it has a massive boost in the energy. And normally for me, for most drivers, when I see it in a single driver, usually for me this is a big no-no to have such extra energies. But it's really a crapshoot, because in this case, with the FC8 driver, it does not present itself in a really mean and bad way, because in most cases when you have the high frequencies that much higher, actually the problem is not that you have more high frequencies, but the problem is if you have more high frequencies which are poor quality high frequencies, and that produces fatigue, and it's just not good on the long term. However, with the FC8, even though it has this massive boost in the high frequency energy, still it's not fatiguing. because there's no distortion, there's no ringing in it, and it's not represented at all by any measurement that we are getting from the company or other companies. I don't find any data on single drivers that would predict whether a driver will be fatiguing or not. In general, when you see this kind of extra high frequencies, in the vast majority of the single drivers, it will tell you that it will be fatiguing and you will have problems with ringing and all sorts of stuff. But not in the case of this driver, and I think that's because partly because this driver has an extremely strong motor and it's keeping a real tight control over the cone, and it's not allowing the cone to do any other movement than what it's supposed to do. And also, let's see how we can get back there. They have this unusual atypical suspension method, and they have this a graph here that shows like typically when the excursion goes bigger and bigger, then the spider will limit the excursion a lot, and this will make, let's go back here, this type of extra energy be unlistenable and fatiguing. But because with their spider design, when you increase the cone excursion, it's not limiting the amount of force, or I would say the same amount of force. If you double the force, it will like double the excursion instead of doubling the force, and the excursion just goes like 50% up. So because of that, it's not prone to making those nasty distortions and discrepancies in the high frequencies. So I think that so it's really hard to kind of get any ideas from measurements how it will really work in a cabinet or whether it will not work at all. When you see these ups and downs, really those are there to work around like what will be the optimal cabinet dimension to work with it, with individual frequencies, how does it work. And when you go look at the bass, here they don't even list anything below 100 hertz, and actually anything listed below 200 hertz, it's kind of like a fairy tale, I think, in my opinion, because it will be just so much totally 100% dependent on your cabinets and your room interaction. So I don't even look at what the drivers produce below like 100 hertz, what's on the datasheet. So and I'm not missing anything from this graph here in that regard. And you would think that, oh, probably this driver doesn't do anything below 100 hertz. Not at all. It's an insanely powerful single driver for low frequencies, and it can it's just astonishing. And so actually I have noticed that the FC8 driver is a driver in its own when we are looking at bass reproduction, how low this driver can go without much effort. And it's just fantastic. So I have in my upstairs room that's about 20 square meters, and the downstairs room is about twice, like 40 or so, 45. And in the upstairs room, it goes down strongly to 30 hertz. Like 30 hertz is like really strong, and it really vibrates, and you feel the whole room energized to an insanely powerful level, even with my 3-watt amplifier driving it. So when I look at where it is, at the data, where was the data? Measurements here. And it says 92 dB sensitivity. And you would think that that's not enough for a 3-watt amplifier. I want higher sensitivity. But when you look at these, oh wait, where was it? Here. When you look at the graph here, they give us a really conservative measurement of that 92 dB. Plus, this driver is actually a 16 ohm driver, and it's not a 4 ohm driver, so that this 92 dB is worth so much more than just the 92 dB. So if it was like a 4 ohm specification, then they would specify it like 100 dB to have like an equivalent sensitivity. So you should consider it as such, that when you have a tube amplifier with a 16 ohm tap, you put it on even with 3 watts, you can enjoy a grand piano in its full splendor with it, and it's just amazing. It really feels like sitting next to a grand piano, which I did many times. So I know how you feel, how your body feels, and the clarity is there, and with the grand piano reproduction, you can really tell if the speaker has ringing issues or problems in the high frequency, because it's going to show up, and it's not going to sound anything remotely similar to a grand piano. And with the FC8 it does. So they have given a very conservative rating here for the sensitivity, and I have found that this is worth in real life more than many of the drivers which are spec'd at 98 dB. They cannot deliver what the FC8 delivers. In the high frequencies, yes, they can deliver, perhaps even more, but mid-range, bass, nada, nothing. So here you get a performance from this driver that is extremely strong in the bass, and not just the regions that we see here, but with my void pipe in that 20 square meters room down to 30 hertz, it's an absolute beast. It totally just destroyed any sub that I had in the room. It just ate them for breakfast. Like, that's a joke. Get those out of here. And when I moved it downstairs in the much bigger room, where the room layout is not optimal for them, what I noticed is that the mid bass and deep bass levels were lower, so like a shelf down a couple dB lower, but it extends there down to a solid 20 hertz, solid clear 20 hertz, and it is just amazing. It doesn't have that instant energizing feeling that I get in the smaller room, but it just so huge, so luxurious, so amazing, and when you have those deep notes coming, it's just sometimes even like scary, and it just ignites so many emotions. It's fantastic. So that's about it. What my thoughts are on the schematics on the frequency measurements of full range drivers, and of the drivers, exotic drivers. I would really recommend the Cube Audio FC8. It is just phenomenal, especially for the void pipe. I think that is the most amazing driver. I have also recommended the Sonido SFR 200A for my void pipe cabinet plan, and that one, I think it most likely it will have a warmer tone, but it won't have as powerful bass response. So that's how to balance the two when you are looking for them. So those two are my recommendations, the FC8 and the Sonido SFR200A, and they have very different personalities, very different character, and I love both kinds of characters, and I can live with either of them. So these are my two recommendations. Thank you for your amazing question. Have an awesome day. Bye bye.